All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to the webinar today. And I'm really excited to talk about this new buzzword that's coming around, generative AI. It's something that you probably heard about quite a bit, and there's not exactly a good explanation for it for a lot of people. If you're not a technical person, maybe you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to figure out how this concept and how this new technology can be applied to you, you are in the right place. So this webinar is called Discover How Generative AI Can Be Used to Rapidly Improve Your Business, Drive Growth in Sales, Marketing, and Product Support. So jumping into it, by the end of the webinar, I've got a couple of goals on what I want to accomplish together today. So I want to talk about what generative AI is and what it's not, what it's capable of, what its limitations are, and just explaining the bounds of that and why that's the case, because it really matters when you're talking about how to apply it to your business. And once we get an understanding of what generative AI is, I'm going to talk about how to apply it to your business so you can achieve goals such as increasing revenue, generating more leads, and increasing your operational efficiency. And then we're going to talk about real-world applications of generative AI in business, and what it looks like to actually put this stuff into practice. So to start, my name is Brandon Burr, and I'm the founder and CEO of JetLogic Solutions. I've spent my life building software and digital companies, digital marketing, digital info product companies, that have achieved over $6 million in revenue. And I'm passionate about leveraging technology to solve business problems and utilizing things such as software development and technology. That's where my background primarily is. I've been doing that my entire life. As a software developer and engineer, I understand computer software technology and where all this stuff came from. And I've built SaaS platforms that have users in 180 countries throughout the globe that have been used by millions of people. And I'm really passionate about the intersection of software, digital marketing, software as a service, and entrepreneurship. So I came to the world of generative AI a bit incrementally, let's call it that way. So I was around a lot of startups in the 2018, 2019 timeframe that were utilizing the early versions of generative AI to do things such as copywriting. Now, at the time, these models were not impressive, let's call it that. They were generating text that clearly was robotics and machine generated and stuff like that. But it was interesting enough at the time. And it wasn't until a little bit later on when some of the newer models came out that I really started to understand and see the potential of where this technology could go. So I took the early versions of the models and I started applying it to the business that I run, where I've got digital marketing agency arms, I've got software development arms, and really got a sense of what this technology was capable of, where its limitations were, and how we could apply it in our business. And as a result of that, I was able to dramatically increase the efficiency of my marketing agency business, was able to get projects done quicker, and also was able to really improve the rate and speed of my software development that was on my software as a service business side of things. So with this webinar, what we're going to cover within it, first and foremost, what is generative AI? We're going to talk about it so you can understand it, specifically the technology behind it and why it works the way that it does. And then we're going to talk about how generative AI can benefit your business. So that, of course, is on the marketing side, how you can generate more qualified leads, sales side, how you can generate more revenue, product, so how do you increase the speed and quality of your product development, and of course, how do you apply it to support so you can make customers happier and get them answers quicker. So ultimately that will increase customer satisfaction in your business. So diving right in, understanding generative AI. So let's talk about what exactly generative AI is. So this is let's call it a buzzword. It's a term that people are using in order to describe a particular type of technology that's rather new. So the origins of what are now called generative AI come from a machine learning model that was published by engineers at Google in 2018 by a paper, called Attention Is All You Need. And it produced this it's called the transformer model, is the specific technical term for it, which is a word that basically means a neural network that has the ability to understand the text that you're reading. I'm overgeneralizing, but it's important to do that in order to make it specific for a non-technical audience. So where this whole innovation actually came from is they were trying to make Google Translate and language translation services better. And they were looking for new ways to do it, and they were applying neural networks in order to do this. So a neural network is actually a computer data model that resembles the neural networks of the brain. So it actually comes from neuroscience. They modeled how the neurons in the brains work and how all the neurons are connected with each other across vast networks in order to store memory and experiences and all sorts of things in your brain, allegedly, as the current science understands it. So what they found when they were applying these new, it's called a transformer model, to language translation, because they were originally trying to translate between English and German, as an example. How can they get better at more natural translation? What they would do is they would train English language and they would just read it, and it's called encoding it, and then they would train the German side in there and then kind of connect, words and context together. There's certain words that are used in the English language that are only used in certain contexts and all that sort of stuff. What they found was it was remarkably good at language translation, where you could easily translate back and forth in a better way between English and German, where it was more efficient and less error prone. Now, the eureka moment, if you want to use that term, actually came from when they were instead of translating back and forth between languages, they were translating kind of between English to English, and they were asking it like normal questions. And what they found was they were actually getting answers to the questions. Because what this model effectively does, if you think about autocomplete on your computer browser, if you go to google.com and you type in, I'm looking for Nike blank, and then it's going to autofill shoes, because it figures, okay, I'm looking for Nike. Like, if you understood all of that human language, everything that humans have ever said, it's pretty reasonable to expect that shoes is going to come after Nike, because Nike is a shoe brand. So that's one example of how probability models are applied to predicting the next word. And it turns out that if you take that same concept and you put it on steroids by giving it visibility to the entire sentence or entire paragraph that you're reading, and then you happen to have it trained on the entire sum total of internet and human speech in existence, it's actually pretty good at mimicking what a human would say in that situation. So that's the essence of this transformer model and where that model came from, and of course how that could start to be applied to actual real world situations in order to get answers out of questions. So that's one example of a generative AI model. There are some other ones, DALL-E and stuff like that too, that are more called like diffuser models. It's outside the scope of this presentation though. So that was an in-depth explanation of models, but it's important to understand, again, what this is and how we got here. So there's currently models available kind of on the market, if you want to call it that, that are in two camps. So there's proprietary models that are owned by companies, and then there's open source models that are freely available for use, maybe developed by companies or whatever it happens to be. Maybe they're developed by independent organizations or whatever. So the challenge with these models is that you need a tremendous amount of processing power and electricity in order to make these things. So into the tunes of millions and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases even billions of dollars worth of hardware, as well as electricity, in order to produce what it is that you see when you type in a question on ChatGPT, for example. So it's very hard for companies to really innovate in this space without a tremendous amount of resources. That's why you find OpenAI, which is very well funded, Google, and then you've also got some open source models from Meta, such as Llama. So some of the main competitors in this space, like are in the proprietary side, of course, like ChatGPT and Gemini, which are of course done by OpenAI and Google. Those are the main models and stuff at this, like as of the time of this recording, in July of 2024. These are the front runners as far as quality and speed for proprietary models. Claude has had some very interesting developments recently. But this space is moving along very quickly and very fast, and this is likely going to change over time. So the contenders for the open source models, Llama 3 is personally the best one that I've used. It's called the 70 billion parameter model, which is pretty intense one. You need some very expensive, probably 5 to 10 grand worth of hardware at your house in order to be able to run it. So I've got some servers running in my house that can produce it, but is nowhere near as fast even as ChatGPT can do. But it's very interesting because you can generate close enough to high quality response with something that can technically run on a computer that you own at home rather than having to go to the cloud. So there's some other ones, Mistral and all that. But without getting too much into the weeds on that, I want to cover a topic that's specifically related to what you're going to be doing as far as applying generative AI in your business. This is called retrieval augmented generation. So retrieval augmented generation is a unique way of interacting with a model because, as I mentioned earlier, these models are extremely expensive to train and maintain to the tune of, again, you want to train your own model from scratch, it can cost you $14 million. So if you're Ford or 3M or something, you can do that. You've got the budget for that. But if you're virtually anybody else, you probably can't do that. So a couple different techniques have evolved in order to specialize in custom train, air quotes, train models with your information. There's fine tuning, which is interesting that it's outside the scope of this particular talk. And then there's retrieval augmented generation. So RAG is the kind of the short acronym for that. Now what that effectively means is that you're going to take all of your information that you have, PDFs, transcripts, text, or whatever, you're going to give it to this model, and then what the model does is then it reads all of that information before it ever answers your questions. So it's kind of like an after the fact, aftermarket source of information that it goes to understand before it actually responds to your question. So it's a very low cost, high return way of getting your information, knowledge bases, and all that into a model without having to go through the expensive process of training it. So now that we've covered the specifics of what generative AI is, without getting too much into the weeds, which is very easy to do, I'm going to go into how to apply this to your business. So generative AI combined with marketing is probably one of the most powerful applications that I've seen for this. I'm the most excited by marketing as well as product development, but we'll get to product development a little bit later on. So, how can you generate more qualified leads with generative AI? So there's two, primary things I want to focus on. Of course, accelerating content creation, and then how that can help you generate more qualified leads. So content creation, this is a very controversial topic, I guess you would say, in the marketing space, because there's a lot of people that think that the machine can't replace what they do in their skills. And they're right in a lot of ways, but they're wrong in some. And I think it's important to understand the distinction between the two, because if you're somebody who's a marketer, if you're a copywriter, it's my opinion, which I've done a lot of copywriting, I don't believe you should view generative AI as a threat. I believe you should view it as a tool to help amplify your copywriting. So the way that I use to the metaphor that I use to describe this is like it's like a calculator, right? So imagine you're in 1750 or whatever time frame this metaphor happens to map to, and you're Galileo, and you're Newton, let's say, got calculus going, and someone drops a calculator on your desk. So if you didn't know math before having a calculator dropped on your desk, you're not going to be good at math just because you have a calculator now. But if you're somebody who has command of math and you know how to do it by hand, and now all of a sudden you have a tool that makes it a lot more efficient for you, you're going to become substantially better at computation and solving mathematics problems. So my opinion on generative AI, specifically for marketing, is the same way. So, because right out of the box, if you don't really know what you're doing, it's going to generate, and this gets on the con side of things, like it generates a lack of depth. It doesn't go really deep into the specific language that you would want to use. The output's kind of generic because, again, it's trained on the sum total of human experience, which by definition is average, right? So it's going to give you by default an average output. If you think about LLMs, large language models, as a mirror, an average question is going to give you an average response if it's trained on average data. So by default, it's going to require editing from start, and it's not going to necessarily give you the most creative output. Like some people just have a lot of difficulty with creativity from the start, so it actually helps give a leg up in a lot of instances. It's great at idea generation. It's great for brainstorming. It's great for all these sort of things, and you can use that to generate excellent first drafts. So sometimes the outputs, depending on the models, tend to be a little bit more repetitive. Which again, if you look at all this, it's not a, how would I say, it's not a problem. It's an asset, because like if you're writing a paper, if you're doing a piece of work, you want to write a good first draft. Or you don't even want to write a good first draft. You want to write a first draft. And then once you write a first draft, then you can start rewriting it. Me personally as a writer, I am excellent at second and third drafts. I am rough. I'm pretty bad at the first draft, like you get writer's block and then you try to push your way through it and it's hard and you got to do all this. Generative AI is excellent at writing first drafts. And that's kind of the partner that I want when I'm writing, is I can come up with something and then go through it and rewrite it and edit it and all this sort of stuff. So so that's a good thing. As far as pros for this, like of course speed is incredible, and it's funny, people complain about, oh, this is a slow model. It's like, well, this thing can write way faster than a human, so even at its worst, it's super fast. Of course, low cost. The actual cost per token and all this stuff, cost per word, is super low, especially compared to the time that it takes you to actually put together a first draft. So that's excellent. It's certainly consistent. You give it good inputs, it'll give you good outputs, and you can try around different things, and that's great. So, and again, it's great for a first draft, and it can produce very high quantity. So you could go and, I've written entire ebooks based on this, and what would normally take you 100 hours to do, you can do in an hour and a half. And then you go through and rewrite it and edit it and make it your own, and it's really good. So that's really what you want to consider when it comes to thinking about the pros and cons of using it to generate content. So the great thing about this too is you can generate so many diverse content types. I like to train my LLM responses based on formats. So I say I'm looking to write a blog post and I'm using this structure. Or I'm looking to create an email sequence and I want this structure. Here's what an email sequence looks like for me. This is what I want. And then it will read that, it will understand it, and it will tailor its output to that particular format. So you can actually take the same content and then produce email sequences, and then you can produce blog posts, or you can produce webinars. My software business, my SaaS business is in the webinar space. So we do a lot of webinars for clients. So we'll take their content and turn it into structured outlines and presentations and all that. And so I'm really good at understanding what a good structure for a webinar is. And then if you tell AI, it's like, follow this structure, it will take the content and apply it to that structure. And it's incredibly efficient at doing that. So like another area that's really important that AI can help with is content personalization. So when you're going through and you're building your content, like it's one thing to have just generic content that doesn't speak to any particular audience. It's another thing to really kind of narrow in your target market and understand who you're talking to. So one of the exercises that I do when I'm writing and using AI as a co-pilot on this is I have either I give it a target persona or I have it come up for target personas. I'll interact with it and say, I'm looking to talk with this audience, and here's the market, here's the demographics, here's their this and that or whatever. I give it whatever information I can about who my ideal customer is, and I say create a target persona for this, and it will come out and it will create like a customer avatar that's very specific and it has all the data and information that I need in there. And then once I do that, now I've got that template, and then I can feed it back into AI and say, okay, take this email and write it so it's targeted specifically to this person. Like, understand that person's pain points, understand what problems they're trying to solve, understand the solutions, understand the words and the language that they use. And it's remarkably efficient at doing just that. So that's really something to think about. And you can also do it across multiple audiences too. So you can have it rewrite the same content for multiple audiences. So now let's get into generating more qualified leads. How do you do that? So this is, again, similar to your target audience customization, but you really want to think about like, what messaging am I putting out there? And how am I speaking to my market? What does my brand look like? Things like positioning statements, your messaging, call to actions, and all this sort of stuff. So, I put all of my content through this particular framework with AI, and I have it come up with all these. I'm like, I use it as like a marketing brainstorming partner, and it's like, here's my audience, here are their pain points, here's the things that I'm selling. Like, how do I convey this as a message? How do I combine things together? I've many times when trying to come up with my own branding, like solving branding problems, I'll use AI as a partner to like come up with that and say, here's like what I'm trying to do, like what's our ideal USP for this particular thing. Because once you do that, now all of a sudden you've got a framework where you can start to build marketing assets off of that. You can do things like advertisements, webinars, and all that. So, and that gets into the next thing is like, okay, now you can use it to do things like create advertisements. For ourselves and our clients, I've used AI to generate a substantial amount of advertisements for Google ads, for Facebook ads, for, you name it. It's not quite there yet as far as images, but like the copy is very much on point. So come up with the headlines, come up with the descriptions, come up with call to actions and all that sort of stuff. It's incredible what it can do. So email campaigns, of course, it's excellent at this too. You go through and you say, I want to create a 6-step email sequence targeting this particular pain point. Here's a solution. I want to deliver content around this and come up with that. So it'll come up with, come up with 10 different headline ideas for this campaign. And I pick the ones that I like. And then I say, okay, now write this email, follow this format, and here's the, and then it gives me all of that. And again, that's an excellent first draft that I can use. And then of course getting into webinars, and this is one of my favorite areas for helping with AI. So I've done a ton of webinars in my career, having a webinar hosting company. Jet Webinar is a webinar platform, and we've done a lot of custom funnels for clients. And I love going through and brainstorming with them, with the clients, and saying, what's your target market? What are your pain points that you're solving? What are all these different things? And I take all the information, feed it together, and then I use the retrieval augmented generation on all of the webinars that I've done in the past. So I feed it every webinar that's been a high quality webinar that we've done, and I say, here's kind of something to model after. And then it will come up with a bunch of different campaign ideas and webinar ideas for that particular client or that webinar that we're doing. And then once I have some ideas that I personally like, I feed it back in and say, okay, create an outline for this. And again, I don't just take that point blank and not even think about it or change it. I use that as a basis to build off of. And that's one of the hardest things when you're starting a webinar from scratch, is to come up with all these different ideas and concepts. And it's actually the thing that AI is best at. So, and you can just discard what you don't like and use what you do. So, again, I mentioned the retrieval augmented generation. This is an area like when you have all of your marketing materials here, you can go and put them all into AI. So you can take all your PDFs, you can take your emails, you can take your whatever you have, your webinars, and then you can feed it back into the machine and say, okay, here's our messaging, here's our framing, here's our positioning, here's our language, here's the words that we use, here's what works, here's what doesn't. And the more information that you give it, the more information it has to produce a better outcome. And again, you can take your existing content and existing information and apply it to so many different areas of your business. You can do different types of blog posts and infographics, presentations, all of that sorts of stuff. So, this is an excellent area to really build your capabilities around. So that's the marketing side. Now let's get into sales. So how can you use generative AI to generate more revenue? There's a lot of ways to do this. I would say indirectly, somewhat directly. It's I think more direct with marketing, but it's a little bit more indirect as far as the supporting sales enablement. I'm probably misusing that term, but as a sales enablement tool. So you can go and do things like sales script creation, outbound sales emails, follow-up and response emails. So let's dive into what some of that stuff looks like here. As far as generating more revenue, so sales script creation. This is one of the most exciting things I've seen as far as applying generative AI to sales organizations in your business that you can do. So the job of a sales manager is to pay attention to all of the sales calls that you're doing and then make comments and notes and all of that, give feedback to the sales representatives and see if there's areas where you can help and assist and all these different things. So if you use AI to either generate initially a sales script or if you use it to enhance an already existing sales script, it's going to do a great job at that. It's going to help out a lot. It's going to give you a lot of different ideas. But what's even more powerful is if you take all of your existing sales calls, transcribe them, and then feed them into AI, and then ask them to critique them. So imagine you've got 10 sales reps working for you, and these 10 SDRs are doing a bunch of demo calls, and you record all those demo calls. So now let's say you've got a database of 100 videos on with all the sales information on there. You've got, who did it and who's the prospect or whatever. Let's say you transcribe those 100 sales calls, and then you feed all those 100 sales calls, let's say with the results of that, into AI, and then you say, produce an ideal model across the organization for what the best sales template is for a sales script. And then it will take all that, it will learn from all of them, it'll learn what works best, and it'll apply it together into a single one. And you can constantly refine your sales script and improve what you're doing. You could also have it actually give feedback on individual sales scripts. It's like, John is, here's 10 of his sales calls, come up with great feedback on how he can improve his sales pitch. And it will give him real candid feedback and things he can apply. And then over time, you can then check that against, is he doing that? You can give him scorecards and reports. There's just so much that you can do. And the great thing is the more information that you feed the AI, the better the output's going to be. So another area where there's a ton of opportunity is in outbound sales email. So the difficulty of doing outbound sales emails at scale is it tends to work best when there's personalization. And personalization is really hard. So in terms of investment of time, it's not that hard, but it's hard at scale. So AI can help you with that. You don't want to over rely on it, because if it comes across too AI sounding, then of course that violates the principle of being personable. So you want to be specific in how you use it, but if you use it correctly, you can be very precise in building outbound sales prospecting emails that work really well. We have one of our digital marketing agencies, under my company that does really well at doing AI generated proposals, and our lead rates have went up, our closing rates have went up, all that sort of stuff, just because it's this slight sacrifice and that handwritten personalization comes at a benefit of a massive amount of volume that we can do for that. So I highly recommend doing that. You can also do things like split testing and making sure that your language is right, having critiques on whether or not your language is persuasive or not. There's just so many different things you can do. So getting into follow-up and response emails. So this is very similar to the outbound sales emails, but like how can you go and generate templates or individualized responses for questions and things that people have. So again, this is a game of margins. So any tool that you have to win will certainly be to your advantage. So yeah, follow-up and response emails, highly recommend having AI critique and help write that. Again, to an extent, you don't want to have it too robotic sounding, but with some proper editing, you should be good there. So let's go into optimizing sales processes. So what can you do to make sure that you're being the most efficient that you can in your sales organization? Obviously, I spoke to sales script writing and all that sorts of stuff. Like you want to think about every step along the sales process pipeline as if you can get 5% improvement in any of your key metrics along your organization, it's going to have large impacts on the downstream results of your business. You'll have a little bit better lead conversion or a little bit better conversation skills. That stuff's going to come. There's just so many areas where you can win with this. So a couple of the different things to think about. So again, tying it in with sales calls, like I mentioned, maybe you build a technology system, like we build these kind of systems, which ties it in with your phone and your video calls and stuff like that, where all of your stuff's being integrated and critiqued in real time. You can do lead scoring. You can do an automated way of processing massive amount of data and emails and say like, okay, here's how likely this person is to become a client, or they're a big client, or they're a potential small client, whatever it is. Automating emails, automating follow-ups, doing things like scheduling demos. Like there's so many ways that the sales process itself can be automated. Assisting with things like closing. Again, so even an email here or there, building automations around that, and doing email customization could be enough to just move the ball along and close the deal. Because it's hard, like when you've got a large pipeline and you've got a lot of people to follow up with. As they say, the fortune's in the follow-up, and if you don't have every little advantage that you can, maybe a deal will fall through the cracks, and that, depending on your business, that can turn into thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, or even hundreds or millions of dollars. And again, the return on investment of that is just super high. And you can also have it critique what you're doing and say, okay, where are some areas where I need to improve? What are things that I missed? There's a lot of different ways you can do that. So assisting with sales managers. So this very similar to what a sales manager would do with critiquing the sales scripts. So how do you use it? You can training is an excellent way. So if you have all of your sales knowledge and sales databases and scripts and all that sort of stuff, AI is trained on that. You can use that to interact with your sales reps in order to make sure that they have the right information and knowledge, or they're using the right language, or the right processes. So training can really be automated for sales managers as well. So, and again, overseeing all that, you can oversee the process, you can oversee the data, the KPIs, and the results. You can feed in all of your sales statistics and say, okay, here are the closing rates, here's this person, that person, whatever, and then ask AI to really come up with some thoughts and critiques on it. And just anything that you can get to get some kind of signal from noise is going to be a huge advantage in the long run. So, and again, I mentioned sales training, but I want to talk about that on a little bit deeper level. Like, if you want to make a good salesperson great, like sales training is going to help you do that. And sales training can be difficult. It can take time. There's a lot of coaching involved. There's different models. There's all that sorts of stuff. And generalized sales training is good. Like if you go to an organization and buy their training course, and that's great. But it's not going to be necessarily customized to your particular business. So if you have an AI model that's trained on sales training as well as your individual business, so it knows the language, it knows your products, it knows your sales scripts, it knows all of that, it's going to really be able to amplify the effectiveness of your sales training, and also give people real-time feedback and critiques on how well they're doing and how close they are for that. So yeah, sales optimization. This goes along the lines of sales process automation, how you can improve there. Again, data-driven insights, like feed all of your data into it, utilize machine learning to especially if you have a lot of data in a large organization, this can do so much heavy lifting and legwork for really processing and pulling context and meaning out of the information in a way that makes sense. CRM integration. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put generative AI in between different parts of your process and kind of output it for CRMs. There's some really cool innovations happening here. So you can do summarizations of the conversations that you've had. You can put in call transcript summaries. You can turn those into tasks and action items and all these different things and feed that into things like Salesforce or whatever in order to make sure that you're staying on top of your sales prospects and opportunities. Predictive sales analytics. If you've got a large organization, you're trying to understand out of a large number of conversations which ones are possible, likely to close. Again, like generative AI is excellent at this. It could go and analyze thousands of conversations and sales calls and say, here, I'm going to lead score all of these, and here's how close these deals are. And maybe this agent is, this SDR is a little bit optimistic. Maybe they're not optimistic enough. There's a lot of interesting data that can come from having a large amount of information that it can draw from. So yeah, that's as far as sales. Those are some of my key thoughts on how you can go and really apply that to your business. Now let's talk about generative AI and product. How can you use this to improve the quality and speed of your product development? If you're a software developer, if you have a company that does software development, such as a software as a service, technology firm, or whatever it happens to be. So jumping into this, so we have a couple key areas that I want to go over here. So talking about improving the speed and quality of your coding, that's one area where you can use generative AI for product development. You can rapidly develop product architecture, and you can also accelerate debugging and product design. So jumping into it, improving the speed and quality of your coding. So automated code generation. This is an interesting debate where there's a lot of people, especially developers, I've noticed, that are threatened by the idea of generative AI, that, again, like marketing, they think, oh, generative AI cannot code as well as I can, or I'm more creative, or this or that or whatever. And again, I think that's misguided. I don't think that's necessarily right, but it's also not wrong. You have to take the metaphor of a calculator and apply it to here, where generative AI is not going to take somebody who's not good at coding and have them become a good coder. They're not going to become a great coder. They're not going to be able to become a coder at all. And if they're a good coder, it has the strong potential to turn them into a great coder. And if they're a great coder, it has a very strong potential of turning them into an outstanding 10x coder. Because if you go through with generative AI and you can rewrite code, if you can debug and all this sort of stuff in there, it has the potential of making you probably 5 times more efficient, maybe even upwards of 10 times more efficient as you currently are. Now I have a particular insight to this because myself, I am a developer. I've been coding my entire life. I'm particularly agnostic to whether or not something's going to be threatening my job or whatever. And I've found generative AI to be incredibly powerful for helping me write code, helping me rewrite code, helping me solve unique problems, and even having it take my existing code and I ask what it's doing and how I can improve it and optimize it and make it better. The most effective models that I've currently found, again, at the time of this recording, to help out with this are OpenAI's GPT-4 model, specifically for Turbo. I don't use 3.5. I haven't played around much with 4.0, so I can't speak to the code quality with that, but I've found 4 being an excellent model for that. The other ones, people have said that the Claude models are pretty good. The 3.5, the most recent one, I haven't personally used that one yet, so I can't speak to the quality, but I've found even improvements in code quality and speed and stuff like that can help out dramatically. So this is something where, as a coder or developer, you're going to want to go and play around with this and get used to it, because you have to look at it like a co-pilot. It's somebody who can look over your shoulder and write functions for you and this and that. It's just like if you go to Google and ask it a question, something pops up in Stack Overflow and you copy and paste the code. That's an oversimplified metaphor, but it's good enough here where you want to go and take that code, apply to what it is that you're doing, come up with unique, new, and novel solutions to the coding problems that you have. Now, there are some IDEs out there that you can either yourself or empower your developers to use, such as Cursor, that have built-in tools that allow you to do AI copilots along the way and can review your code. Some of the limitations of code generation right now are it doesn't necessarily have the entire context of your whole application. I believe that's going to be a problem that will be solved at some point soon if it's not solved already. With not my knowledge, but it's quite possible, where it will go through and understand your entire code base and use that information in order to generate functions and classes and all that sort of stuff that you need in the language that you need. I've been extremely impressed with these AI models and their ability to generate code from there. So getting into code refactoring. So this is an area where generative AI is incredibly powerful with using for building an application. So you can go and you can take code that you've written, or you can take functions. I've taken entire files and I throw it into generative AI and I asked it to write this better, make it more efficient, make it faster, what are the performance bottlenecks, all these different questions, and it will come up with answers to that. And generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, it's pretty accurate. And then I ask it to rewrite the code and it does an excellent job at that. I've had it handle very complex workflows where I use video processing and rendering engines and call external Linux commands and all this crazy stuff, and it actually has a deep understanding of what's actually going on in the code, what it's trying to do, and also what the most efficient way of rewriting that code is. So I highly recommend playing around with it, getting used to it, and seeing how you can use this to dramatically increase the quality of the code that you have there. So this is an area too, rapid prototyping. When you're building a new application, it's like writing a first draft of anything. So if you have an idea for an application, I've found a ton of success in even asking it. I say, okay, I want to build XYZ application. Create a code structure for me. Build it around this particular framework. Do this, do that. What's the file structure? And then I'll have it output the file structure. I'll create the files. And I'll say, write this file, write that file, do this. And it will actually go and build the entire framework of your code for you. And again, it's not likely not going to run straight out of the box the first time, but that's not the point. The point is you get something on paper, you get a first draft that you can start to iterate and quickly move through in your development of your application. And then you can ask it to do certain things. It has, many of these new models do have some of an intuitive understanding of vision for however that works. I'm not sure, but it's incredible. So if you ask it to do a UI UX component, if you ask it to lay out something on the page, it can actually formulate HTML. It can do all of these really interesting and cool things that help you rapidly bring a product idea to market quickly. If you're building an application with this and you're owning a company, you're not necessarily a developer, one of the risks that I want to highlight here is that unless you sufficiently sell the coders and the developers on your team on the benefits of using this, sometimes they may not want to use this right out of the box. Coders themselves have processes and everything that they've done throughout the years that they're familiar with, and this is quite a quantum leap probably in the workflow that they're used to. So unless you have someone who's super forward thinking that just decides right out of the gate they can use this and become 10x more productive, that's a key thing. Like, especially if you're paying coders by the hour, one of the things you want to be careful about is that they may not want to use this because it'll get a lot done faster, and then they won't be able to charge as much. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting motivations, incentives, and dynamics at play here that you want to pay attention to. especially when you're looking at coding, because again, it can be 5 to 10x more productive. I'm saying that as a coder, and it's a great thing, and they should be utilizing it because you can produce so much more. So let's go into rapidly developing product architecture. So this is a key thing. This gets into, just like prototyping an application, you want to think about the problem that you're trying to solve, and then you want to build an optimal architecture around that problem. Now, one of the big issues that you have when you're hiring developers and you have development teams is that people, and this is an asset, people are specialized. They're UI, UX, they're front end, they're back end, they're database engineers, they're all these different things. One of the hardest components is to have an higher level vision of the application and the architecture of the problem you're trying to solve, and how that segments into the individual contribution points, such as front end, back end, database structure, schema, all of these different things. Artificial intelligence has no limitations with that. It understands all of those. So you can go through and you can have it build out an architecture. I found a lot of success even giving it prompts saying you're an expert at computer architecture design, at software architecture design, and it will get itself into the mindset that that it is a great architect, and it will output things that are in alignment with a good architect would do. And then from there, you want to take that and iterate it into something that's functional that you can then put on paper, and then start building out from there. Now, a next component you want to think about is AI-driven decision making. So one of the challenges that you have, especially with larger applications, is that there's a lot of information to collate together, to put together, and to analyze as someone who's overseeing a project or trying to make decisions on what to do next. And if you take all of this together, and let's say even you have an application that's currently running and you've got a ton of data in it, you can feed a lot of that data in and ask AI to try to derive patterns out of that data and say, what's the best way to represent this? What's something that I can do to improve this or solve this problem? There's a lot that you can pull out of your existing applications and your new applications and the data from there that will help you utilize machine learning to really solve your problem better. So continuous improvement, and this is a very innovative area that you can start to build out. So if you've got, let's say, a Git repository, or you've got code in some kind of version control system, you can start to put in hooks into there, where as the code comes in, you've got pull requests, you've got all these different things. You can have it feed it into AI, start to give feedback, start to give code reviews. There's so much that could be done there to basically just start to automate parts of the process, or at least assist and improve the process and fulfill roles that things like pair programming does, or code reviews, and all these different things that are part of, let's say, a Scrum process as an example. So there's so much that can be done here. There's so much potential in how you can improve product and design and architecture in your business. So accelerate debugging and product design. Now this gets into what I had mentioned as far as bug detection. So I found generative AI to be excellent at being able to identify issues in the code and issues in the structure of the code, or even things that might function correctly, but they don't function in the way that you intended. So if you build something into your continuous improvement and product iteration process that goes through and does code reviews, and it, let's say, looks at your pull requests, and then it tries to find bugs and proactively do those things, you can really increase the quality of the code that you output per developer, just by cutting out a lot of that iteration process for debugging and development that you would normally need QA for, or something like that. So there's a ton of QA applications for the automated bug detection. Design optimization. So this is a frontier area for generative AI. I've been paying close attention to this over the past year and a half. It's getting a lot better at visual components. So there's video, there's images, there's all of this. I've seen a lot of exciting developments with some of these new models that give me a sense that it has some type of internal representation of what images and pictures can look like. That's very vague sounding, and it's kind of esoteric and etheric and all that. But what I think it means is it has ability to reason when it comes to vision. And that's what they call it. They call it vision models and stuff like that. Now, what that means when you're talking about building out UI, UX designs is that it can take best practices for how to build out applications. So where do you put form components? Where do you put this? Where do you put that? How do you best structure a page? What's the optimal way to do that? You can build that into what it is you're doing and have it output basically design structures and UI UX structures for your application. Now it can do it on a text level and say, here's the way that you break out the page. It can actually write the code for you, which is really interesting because then you can compile the code and you can see that it works. And more recent models are starting to be able to go and actually produce real images based on this. So as of the time of this recording, there's companies such as Canva that are starting to implement this, but also like Figma that are starting to take tech-based UI UX designs and be able to go and build those out with AI. So I would pay very close attention to this space. This is an area where there's a ton of potential. It's evolving rapidly, and it may get substantially better than it is now in the future, probably even near future. So that's it as far as the product development side of things. I want to get into how you can use this to increase customer satisfaction. Now, this is an area where I've had a lot of success implementing generative AI as well too, because we've got under my company a number of brands that have a lot of customers that come through. We have different knowledge bases. We have a lot of information. We also have, in some brands, years of customer support requests and emails that have come in. So I've implemented a lot of these ideas into my own business and have found a ton of success while doing so for automating a lot of the customer support process for there. So let's talk about what that looks like. So one of the key things is you can create knowledge bases. So it assists in creating knowledge base, and also you can train it on your knowledge bases. So I'll get more into that in a minute, but you can also build out automated support agents. So there's some pros and cons of that. We'll talk about that. And you can assist it in reviewing your existing support processes and make sure that everything is going well. So assist in creating a knowledge base. This is extremely exciting. Like as a business owner myself, and we've got a lot of support requests that come in. You've known this if you've ever worked in support. The majority of the questions that come in, it follows the Pareto principle. There's the 80-20 rule. The majority, like 80% of the requests are for like 20% of like your overall stack. Like it's pretty straightforward. So if you have a lot of information on your product, or even if you don't have much, you can use generative AI to start to build out knowledge bases for your support agents based on all of this. So you take all the communications that you have, let's say from current customers, past customers, leads, and all that, and any information that you actually have on the product itself, you can feed all that in and say, my intention is to create a support knowledge base for this, and it will start to produce knowledge bases based on this. So, and it will produce it in a way that's indexed, that's searchable. There's all sorts of benefits for doing it this way. And you can also output things like frequently asked questions. You can output articles. You can output case studies. There's so much you can do here. So you can take that knowledge base and you can use that to generate content. You can use it to generate support training videos. You can use it to generate how-to videos. You can use it to generate tours. You can use it to do all of these interesting things. And the more information that you have, the more you feed it, the more, let's say the more customer support requests you get, you can then feed it back in and just constantly be improving it over time, which gets into maintenance and updates. Again, the more information that you get back from customers, you feed that back in, you look at your support knowledge base as a living document, and then now you've got something really exciting that you can deploy to your support agents and ultimately increase that satisfaction. So automated support agents, what's possible here? So this is something where I think people have a love-hate relationship with this, because it's something that when you're talking with an automated support agent, it's great when it goes well. It's annoying when it doesn't, because you want to talk to a human. Now, there's so many questions that are out there that you can have interacting with an AI-powered chatbot and get good answers to questions for, and those are great for those instances. But you want to make sure that if somebody actually needs to talk to an agent, then it's very easy for them to do so. Because I think with this, you might be able to screen out maybe 70 to 80% of the support requests that are coming in based on basic things where you can refer them to an article or a knowledge-based article or something like that. But you want to make sure that people, if they legitimately have a problem that they can't get solved with the chatbot, that they can access and talk to you. Otherwise, they'll get really frustrated and they'll quit and they might just cancel your product because they just don't want to talk to a robot. So just be very careful about this and monitor it. But if it's done right and your knowledge bases are trained correctly, the bots are trained correctly, and you've got the right articles, this can be a fantastic tool for you to deploy on your website, in your product, and on all of your devices. And of course, one of the benefits for this is it gives you 24/7 customer support assistance. There's no time limit to this. Computers and the AI models never sleep. So you can have around-the-clock support, real-time interaction with your customers, and be able to go and escalate as necessary into support tickets that you can handle during normal support hours. So I highly recommend building this out and optimizing for that. And of course, like I mentioned, common queries that my experience and most people's experience is support requests tend to follow that Pareto distribution. The majority of questions tend to be the same thing, so it'll help you identify which questions those are and then how to best address them to solve the problem, and then build knowledge bases based on that. So assisting and auditing support agents. So this is really important when you've got a lot of support agents and a lot of emails and tickets and all that stuff in. So you can go and feed a lot of their support requests and conversations into AI and ask for real-time feedback on that. So how is this support agent doing? What could they have done better? What did they do well? What could they do that's a good model for everybody else? And you can actually monitor that in real time as well too, because you can build systems and automations and everything that help you keep a pulse on everything that's happening in the support organization and provide dashboards and monitoring and stuff back in real time. All right, so feedback and training. And again, this is something where you can feed everything in. You can get real-time feedback from your customer support agents and use it to build out new customer support agent training. So you can have training modules, you can have interactive bots. There's so many different things that you can do that will help you bring on and onboard new support agents quickly and be able to audit whether or not they know their stuff and also whether or not their support requests are on point. And all of that gives you a feedback loop that really helps you generate good quality assurance with your customer support representatives, which will ultimately increase the customer service quality and customer satisfaction in your business. And if you apply all that correctly and you do it well and everything's trained, you're going to find huge jumps in productivity and customer happiness. So now that all being said, let's talk about how you can apply this to your business. Let's just do a quick overview on everything, review in our minds, areas where we can improve, things like content creation. We talked about personalizing communications, generating more qualified leads. With sales, we talked about doing dynamic sales scripts, optimizing email campaigns, automating follow-ups, product development, accelerating coding, prototyping, architecture design, so many things. Support, customer service, around the clock, training on knowledge bases. All of these different things, it can be overwhelming because there's so many areas where this can improve what you're doing. And especially if you've got a large business, the possibilities are almost endless in how you can apply this. So luckily for us, like JetLogic Solutions, my company, we specialize in technology. We specialize in building software solutions for companies that want to grow their business, either through generating more leads, more revenue, or making their business more efficient and profitable. We understand generative AI at many levels and how it can be applied to your business at many levels. If any part of the presentation resonated with you, we can help build or implement it into production. And again, as a reminder, we've built software products that have had millions of users. We've generated over $6 million in revenue with our products, generated hundreds of thousands of leads, and have built software products that utilize and benefit from generative AI. There's so much that we've done, and there's so much that we can apply to your business. And I know there's a lot of problems in your business that could really be helped through this kind of information. So our business, how we work, we've got three primary functions. We've got JetLogic Studios, we've got JetLogic Advisors, and JetLogic Labs. JetLogic Studios is our custom software development arm. We have teams of developers, we have product architects, we have quality assurance specialists, we have so much in terms of taking your idea and turning it into production. And we utilize generative AI as well as we understand how to implement that into your products and solutions so that your business can achieve the benefits of all of that. Our advisors services, we offer consultative services such as consulting and training and all of these different things to basically bring you these ideas and bring you these insights and figure out how we can apply those to your business in the most effective way so that you can go implement those on your own and scale that across your organization. And also for anyone who's interested in working with us on the lab side, we have a private equity fund that we build, buy, and sell software companies. We have a number of portfolio companies that are our own companies that we built, such as in the video conferencing space, as well as some in generative AI and marketing, that we're always interested in having partnerships with. So based on whatever problem you're looking to solve or whatever issue you have in your business, we can help you in any of these particular divisions. So if you're looking to take the next step and get started, again, my name is Brandon Burr. I'm the founder and CEO of JetLogic Solutions. My email address here on screen, brandon@jetlogic.com. That's logic with an IQ rather than an IC. And if you want to schedule an appointment, there's a link on the screen, a QR code, if you're interested in doing that. So feel free to email me with any questions. I'd happy to have a conversation with you, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.